Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to True Crime with the Sarge. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. Thanks for coming out on this Saturday afternoon, especially after many of you celebrated Thanksgiving here in the United States. For those that didn't celebrate Thanksgiving, it was just Thursday for you guys, but now the weekend is here. So I appreciate you guys coming out. Just going to go through a couple of administrative stuff. I got a bunch of new members I want to call out. Elizabeth Whitney, Regina Carter, City Kitty, Susan Jason, Debbie's here, and Wendy B. Thank you for joining the channel. I appreciate that very much. And I had a really great experience yesterday. If for many of you do know Gisela K from Grizzly True Crime, she gave me a shout out to her massive following, and a lot of people have climbed on board. This channel has taken off over the last 8 weeks. Went from 300 subscribers to over closing in on 3,300 now. So I want to thank all of you guys between JBO Nation and now Grizzly True Crime. It's absolutely fantastic that the outpouring of support from you guys is greatly appreciated. If you're watching this live now, thank you very much. If you're watching it on the replay, welcome to the channel. And we are also streaming live on Kick. So there is a lot of things going on in the background. We're going to get into some case updates. But tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to have a members-only chat. Never thought that I would have over 40 members this quickly that have joined the channel. And we're going to have a couple of unique things that are going to happen tomorrow. So if you're a member, and this goes for the Kick family too, we will have a special showing just for you guys tomorrow. I'll be answering your questions. There'll be some live Q&A. A couple of you will join me on the stream and some other stuff that we're going to do. It should be fun. And if you're watching football games, you'll be done in plenty of time to go watch the football games. So I just want to do that because I want to just show some appreciation for those of you that have, donated money to this channel in support. And I just want to make sure that you guys are happy too. So, so Sherry, thank you. It's been great. It's been built up fast and it's kind of exciting. So part of this whole channel for me would be to get out as much information as I could. This was a tough weekend to try to get people to come on to do an interview. I usually do interviews. I am doing more analysis today, but I'm going to do analysis on days where, the holidays are in the way and people have other obligations and so forth. I do have a couple of exciting guests that will be coming up, and we'll get to that later on. But one of the cases that I want to jump into today was, I don't know if you caught this, because some of these celebrated cases that we're dealing with, the Brian Kohlberger case and Delphi. And what I mean by celebrated is it's a term in the criminal justice academia that is used when we talk about cases that get the most media attention. That's what they mean by celebrated, not that everybody's cheering and saying that this is great. So one of the things that you deal with when you're in this kind of true crime community stuff is that, what's the latest and what's the greatest and what's the hottest and what people are talking about. We're going to get into some of those cases, but I also like to touch on cases that no one's really discussing at the moment because they're worthy of it. And there's some big news in some of these cases. Like take, for instance, the West Memphis 3 case. Now we're talking about a case from 1993. Now, in 1993, these 3 teenagers were accused and actually prosecuted and found guilty of the murder of 3 8-year-old boys. Now, the details of the crime scenes were absolutely horrific. These boys were stripped down. They were found hog-tied in a creek. One of the boys was actually castrated. And the police zoned in on these 3 teenagers. I had to write their names down because I wasn't going to remember them. Jason Baldwin, Jesse Miss Kelly, and Damian Eccles. And what happens now is they get confessions from these boys. A couple of the confessions they end up getting thrown out because they did it without having, they did the interrogation without having family members present. But here's the thing. In 2007, DNA test results came back that these 3 young men at the time, these 3 teenagers, weren't responsible for the homicides. So they were exonerated in 2007. And since then, they've been fighting to get new DNA technology tested on the things like the ligature marks, and other evidence found at the crime scene. Now, this has been going on for years. Now, the Innocence Project has stepped in and they have filed an amicus brief, which is basically, a friend of the court thing, which they interject themselves into the case to help out on a voluntary basis. Well, the other day, the Supreme Court in Arkansas says now they are going to hear this argument to have the DNA retested. Now, the victims of this miscarriage of justice, not the victims, unfortunately, who were murdered, because we still don't know who is responsible for them. However, the new DNA technology might shed some light on this thing. Originally, when they brought it up, the men who were charged in this case, when they wanted the DNA tested, they were told in the Arkansas court that because they were no longer in prison, that they had no right to ask for this to be tested again. Like mind-blown kind of stuff. So you have the technology to try to find out who the real colors are, but we're not going to do it, which makes absolutely zero sense to me. Now, this has only been going on for a couple of days. So this case you're going to hear about it in the news. So this is why I wanted to cover it and start off with this case first. So the new technologies that they're planning on using, of course, they have, Othram and all these other labs. I'm sure they're going to be using in some of these things. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any DNA recovered that would absolutely tell us who could be responsible for this. You got to remember, they were found in a stream, the young boys, which could have washed away DNA evidence and everything else. However, we do know that there was enough DNA found at the crime scene in order to exonerate these three men. So follow this case. It is something that this West Memphis 3 case is going to be popping up in your news feeds. I guarantee it, in the next couple of weeks, and it should be rather interesting. And it is something that you have to, keep an eye on some of these things. The next case I want to talk about is, I'm sure you heard it, Derek Chauvin, the police officer that was arrested and charged with the murder of George Floyd from 2020 and convicted, I believe it was in 2021. He gets stabbed yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, he gets stabbed. Now, here's the thing that I found interesting. Well, first of all, we knew he was in federal custody. However, he was in the Phoenix facility, and he was stabbed by another inmate. They haven't released who the inmate was, nor have they released his condition. They said he was given life-saving precautions at the jail, and then he was rushed to the hospital. And we don't know which hospital that he's in, but it's actually kind of interesting. But I also want to give you guys a little tidbit in case you are doing your own research. So if you want to find out more about Derek Chauvin or any inmate in federal custody, you can just go to www.bop.gov. So you have to put the www in it. But if you just put bop.gov, it doesn't work, right? So apparently somebody in the federal government doesn't know how to run a website properly, and you have to use the www. So Chauvin had gotten 2 concurrent sentences. He'd gotten 22 years in prison from the state of Minnesota, and then he got 21 years, I believe it was, for the federal rights violations of George Floyd. And they were going to be served concurrently. And here's the other little kicker about this. The Phoenix facility is a medium security prison. And if you go online, you can read reviews that they have about this. And they say that it's very safe. They say that the yard is quote unquote soft, which means you don't really have to worry a lot about yourself in regards to certain things. But Derek Chauvin, we all know who he was or who he is and what he's been convicted of. And, a medium security prison, wow. Somebody finally, so here's the other thing. Somebody who was going to get out eventually too, now commits another felony within it, maybe worse. We don't know. Right now he's getting charged with felony assault, whoever it may be. And then when you do something like this in prison, you end up getting other charges too. So I don't know what's going to happen, but, Derek Chauvin is in a lot of trouble either way in regards to wherever he goes, if he survives this one. Now, let's pivot. So that was basically the breaking news stuff. Let's pivot to some of our cases that we are. A lot of people says, I can't believe the amount of people still defending Chauvin, saying George Floyd died of fentanyl. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of issues with how people have been treated in regards to what they feel about Derek Chauvin. But hey, listen, they got it on video. He is, it is what it is. Yeah, Barbara Jean Butter. We're going to get into the Butter Man in a little bit right now. Hold on a second. So Kerry says, I used to nurse prisoners brought into CCU and the really contentious bad case, the men wouldn't be in local hospitals under their name. Yeah, no, I doubt they're going to put him in there. And you know what? I'm surprised that nothing has actually leaked out in regards to what hospital he's in. I mean, you'd have to listen. If you have somebody who's stabbed or somebody who's seriously injured and likely to die, and you're in the Phoenix facility, you're going to the nearest hospital. So it shouldn't be that difficult to figure out exactly where he is and what hospital he's in. So, I mean, that's just me coming up with that. They're not going to drive way out of the way just because, of who he was, and they don't want any news people on top of his case. You go to the nearest hospital, and that's it. So, if you're looking for it. But just remember that BOP, I'm going to put it in the chat right now, www.bop.gov. That's the website. If you don't use the www, you won't get in there. So that's how you check any federal inmate in the system, or you can do it by name, or if you find you're looking for somebody specific, whether they're a serial killer under federal custody or what have you, you don't need to get their dot number. You can use it for his name, and if you have the more information, the better off you are. So if the person that you're searching for has a common name, it would be beneficial if you have sex, age, and race. So that's just a little tidbit out there. So let's pivot to Lisk, right? Rex Heuermann, Long Island serial killer. I'm not going to get deep down this rabbit hole because in the show notes, yesterday's on Grizzly True Crime, Gisela jumped into this and did a really good job. And she's got the actual letters. She's got some breakdown, and I'm not going to get totally into it, but there's some other aspects that I wanted to talk about that wasn't really touched on in that video. But the link is in the show notes for this one. I encourage you to go read it, go watch the video. So Rex Heuermann is like the gift that keeps on giving. Every week there is something new with this guy, whether it's him, his family, or something else that's going on. So for the true crime community, this is going to continue to go on. There's a couple of things that he has a pen pal. Let's call him that, right? He's got a pen pal who happens to be another serial killer. This guy, Keith Jesperson, who just confessed to his 8th murder. And he also told everybody during the interview that he is basically a pen pal of Rex Heuermann. Now, Rex Heuermann wrote back to him. And the letters, like I said, are in Gisela's video. If you want to see them and see the breakdown, be my guest. I encourage you to go do so. Listen, I've told you guys this before. I don't believe in coincidences. Simple as that. No really cop is going to tell you, or investigator is going to tell you that they believe in coincidences. So Keith Jesperson, the happy face killer, reaching out to Rex is not unusual because his daughter, I think her name is Melissa Moore, started the GoFundMe for Asa, right? So the serial killer's daughter, Melissa Moore, started the GoFundMe for Asa Ellerum. Now, we do know that the serial killers have access, in basically all criminals have access to the internet, they have access to TV, and they got access to a whole bunch of stuff. So we know that following these cases, whether it's online or on television or what have you. So the fact that Keith Jesperson writing now to Rex is not a big coincidence. I know people are making this into, I think, bigger than what it is. His daughter has already had some involvement with the family in regards to this. So he hears it. He reaches out now to Rex, and he tries to tell him to basically, just own up to your crimes. Well, listen, the trial hasn't started yet, and I don't think anybody's going to own up to anything until they figure out if they're going to get away with anything or not. I don't think that is going to be something his defense attorney would want him to do, and it's not going to happen. So it's just something to think about in that regards. One thing I did notice about the letter that Rex wrote back is that he really doesn't make any denials about being involved in this stuff. And if you start looking at some of the some of the moves that they made, right? It's almost like as if giving Ace of the House for $0 a couple of months ago, and all these other things that we seem to be going on. Besides his lawyer saying like he's not guilty, he's not not responsible for these crimes. Like, we really haven't heard any straight out denials out of anybody, even the family members. So it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out, as we learn more and more. But to me, it sounds like a man who's not planning on getting out of jail anytime soon in regards to this. But somebody had wrote in the thing about butter, right? He complained that he's not getting butter on his bread in in jail. Listen, think about these stories that make the news, and then people like myself now we talk about these things. Just think about the family members that have to hear this stuff, right? So this guy is complaining about butter, and meanwhile, he's responsible for at least the murder of three women, possibly the fourth, or maybe even more. And it kind of you just want to shake your head and just say, what's going on here, right? Uh, I think that at certain points, some of this stuff shouldn't be in the news, right? So the and the only reason why it made the news is because apparently Jesperson sent it to a true crime podcast. I forget the name. If somebody could just put the name of the podcast if they know it in the chat, and then people who want to, and they posted this. So it was kind of an exclusive. This podcast writes to serial killers and get some stuff, and that's how this all came to light. I understand why they published this murder sheet. It was Jay. The Lighter Side of Serial Killers. Catch List. That was the name of it. Yeah, Murder Sheet was I think with Delphi gotten the crime scene photos. We're going to get into Delphi in a little bit, but I think Raul's got The Lighter Side of Serial Killers. So they write the serial killers and they get all kinds of information, and they have he doesn't. I'm glad he doesn't get any butter. Yeah, Fuzzy, right? I mean, jeez. But think about this for a second. So I understand. This guy gets the exclusive on the podcast, and kudos to him. And he puts it out just like probably anybody else would have. So that's the only reason why he even made the news in the first place, because then when he released it to his podcast, it became now mainstream news, and Fox News picked it up, and a whole bunch of other people. So listen, we don't fault the people who are running that website, but we have to understand that there are some implications that family members have to hear the stuff that's going on, and it's just something that we need to make sure that we try to tamp down a little bit in regards to that. And here's the here's the other issues that we're dealing with in the Lisk thing, right? I'm still shocked that we haven't heard anything about the DNA from Maureen Brainerd Barnes yet. We still have the whole commissioner talk has just now completely died. Newsday hasn't reported anything. We haven't heard anything from Long Island News 12 about possible candidates, and we haven't heard anything from Ed Romaine, the new county executive, about who he is going to appoint and put in front of the board, which kind of makes me nervous because we're dealing with less than a month until Commissioner Rodney Harrison leaves. I think he said he's leaving in the middle of December, and then we're going to have 2 weeks before the end of the year. It's just going to be matched up, but I don't hear any names or any candidates. Raul, I don't know if you're still in the room, if you heard any names, and that's the kind of thing that is making me a little nervous about this right now. I've talked about this before. I am very concerned about handing this case over to just anybody. Police commissioners rarely run cases. This one, however, has been different. The direct interaction that Rodney Harrison has had with the Suffolk County Police Department, maybe even going over several people's heads, which might have been, part of the reason why he just kind of said, all right, I had enough. I need to do things. Thanks, Raul. No names. And that's, part of the problem now, because does this next person have the same, for a lack of we'll call it a PG-13 rating, gumption to be able to continue that route and being actively involved in this investigation and dictating minor things in the case to keep on pushing this thing forward? Because I know people are just content that they have Rex Sherman and they've charged him right now with the alleged murders of 3 victims, and people are like, okay, I'm happy with that. Listen, I'll take it, but I'm not happy with it. There is so much more work that needs to be done in this case in regarding specifically for many of the victims in these cases. And some of the victims, we still don't even know who they are yet. So there is a ton of work that needs to be done. And yeah, the prosecution, Ray Tierney, is going to take care of the 3 cases they have. Hopefully the fourth will be get added to that before the trial starts, which I can't see happening for at least another year. And then, all the other cases that go along with it. Is Rex responsible? Maybe this whole thing with Jesperson gives, him a thing and say, I'll confess to other cases. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the issue that comes down to, yeah, Michelina, I feel like left for good reasons that we're unaware of. Yeah, and I think some of those reasons might not be something that we're ever going to find out for sure. But the issue that comes down to is we're kind of caught up in a situation where Suffolk County politics rules the day, and they also ruin everything. And that is something that we've seen now for over 13, 14 years in these cases, and going back to some of the others, going back over 20 years or almost 20 years in some of the other things. So I just don't know. Regina, thank you very much for joining the channel. I appreciate that. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the members only channel, 12 p.m. Thank you, Regina. And, here's the other thing about this whole list case. We have gotten 0 from the county executive. There's the thumb. Jay's got to be laughing right now. They have done all of these hand gestures, which makes from Italian people like myself very difficult to do this. I have my hands now buckled up like this because I don't want to be setting off all these damn emoji things that they put out for moving your hands. But the issue that comes down to is that we haven't heard anything from the county executive either, right? The county executive just can't wait to get out of Dodge. He just can't. Steve Ballone just can't wait to get out of Dodge. And he's getting out, and he's just kind of just running radio silent from here on out. And, I understand he's got no say in who's going to be the next police commissioner, but he should have been. Lali, thank you very much for joining the channel. Thank you very much. 12 o'clock tomorrow, members only show. So it's just something that makes me nuts. And I think a lot of other people are making nuts. Now, on December 8th, Jay and I and Raul are going to be at John Ray's LISC Symposium. I don't know what he's calling it, but I'm just calling it the LISC Symposium. And he's going to be detailing more information about possible affidavits and information. It's going to be 3 hours long. So I am assuming it's not going to be a rehash of other stuff. And to me, I think he's going to be doing a data dump. That's my idea. Now, I know you guys know, I know John Ray. I haven't spoken to him since he was the last time he was on the show. So I really don't know. And this is just all speculation on my part. And that they have, so I'm assuming there's going to be a lot more information. Now, Jay and Raul and myself are going to ask John if maybe we can stream some of this symposium to you guys. Maybe we can get 3 different angles at it and try to get some information, and maybe we can get some exclusive content from John, either before, during, or after the show. And that's just something that we're going to be doing. So that's going to be on December 8th, and we'll keep you guys advised of that. And it says here, Fuzzy Puff says, I have a weird feeling that the officer in the Swingers Party plays a role into this, or that people that he has connected with want to go away. Just a feeling based on my feelings. You're not alone in a lot of this. We do know that there has been pushback over the years and rumors that other people and high up positions and all kinds of speculation was the reason why this case stalled in the first place. And there could be a lot of truth to that, because every time it seems as if there was some new information or evidence or something was going to come out, it just seems that things just drop. And this, once again, it happened, right? So we kind of took this roller coaster ride up. We get the arrest, and we're getting all these press conferences and interviews, and all of a sudden it's like, phew, nothing. And then you get the bombshell that Rodney's leaving. And then you just kind of say to yourself, oh boy, here we go. And I've been thinking about this. I had many of you probably already watched it. I had the interview with Cheryl McCollum the other day, and she said something that really stuck with me. It's one of those things like, have you ever had somebody say something to you and he's like, how come I didn't think of that? She said to me on the live, if I find it up, I'll make it a short because it's actually that good. When I had kind of jokingly mentioned about former Suffolk County Police Commissioner Geraldine Hart holding up the belt and looking like, if you remember, I said looking like me in algebra class, like totally clueless. And then, she kind of agreed with that part, but then she said something really interesting. She said that how can anybody that is related to this individual not know that that belt belonged to, let's just say, Rex or his father or somebody else, if that's the case. And yeah, Barbara, and talk about a light bulb moment. I never even thought of that, right? So let's just say this belt belonged to, we know that I think Rex's father had those initials that the belt was found on. We also know that one of the belts had that part cut off. So there could have been at least two belts with those initials on it. And if you're Asa or anybody else in that family and you saw that press conference and you saw the video or you saw the newspaper had this on the front page, I believe, of the Newsday, how could you not be able to recognize that belt? And I thought, yeah, definitely a light bulb moment. And something that, as we're gonna, where is the wife anyway? The first wife, Sherry, it's a great question. There's lots of questions that we don't know about his former life, including where he was living and what he was doing. Pete Pranzo, welcome back. Welcome back. Thanks for coming. Rex's grandfather. Thank you, Raul. So Rex's grandfather had those initials, not his father. Thank you for clarifying that. Sometimes when you're doing these shows, you got so many things going on and you just kind of screw up the facts. So it's always great to have somebody fact checking you. So here, Christine Brennan, the granddad died more than 50 years ago and he lived in Massachusetts. Who believes that was his belt? Not me. Lots of laughs. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see what Hope Ain't Fear. Thank you very much for gifting the membership. I appreciate that immensely. Thank you very much. So, it's just kind of nutty what's been going on this stuff. Now, as I get more involved in this list case, so I started pouring through some of the court docs, and Raul was here too, and he might be able to even give us some other insight on this. But the court docs and the lawsuit, or that the Ace's lawyer has, MJ, thank you very much for gifting a membership. I appreciate that. Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. According to the court docs, it just wasn't about the guns. I don't know if you guys caught this, but of course it was about any cash that law enforcement took. But it said outstanding jewelry, which to me was kind of interesting. And I kind of just caught this just from when I was preparing for this show. And I'm sure, Raul or somebody else has a little more insight on this stuff because, I mean, I can't pretend that I know everything about every case and every little detail. But this is an interesting part, jewelry. Jewelry, when I hear about cases like this, whether it involves patterns or serial, however you want to refer to it as, you can think of trophies. But the problem also comes into play is that, Baby Doe, Peach's daughter had jewelry on her that wasn't taken. But maybe there were some other pieces of jewelry that Peaches had that was identical to the baby, which wouldn't be unusual in certain aspects. But that's when my mind started running. Yeah, pure speculation on my part. But asking for outstanding jewelry, not asking for particular pieces of jewelry. Like they took my mother's wedding band and I want it back, right? So that to me would be like, all right, that's your mother's wedding. That's what all it says is outstanding jewelry. So, kind of out there for it's just Dilly Pickles. You got the gift. Thank you very much. You can thank either MJ gifted it, I think, and we had one other, and Hope Ain't Fear. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Thank you very much, MJ, and Hope Ain't Fear. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. So. And that's basically all I wanted to talk about on Lisk, right? I'm going to get into Delphi in a minute, talk about a total mess. But before I move on from Lisk, is there a specific question So, a Heineman, yes, good point. I would ask for specific items. Yeah, right. So I would ask for certain things, and name them by name and make a list. Like this is what they took, and this is who it belongs to, and this is why it has nothing to do with this case. And that didn't happen. So to me, that's just an interesting point. Like I said, I just discovered this the other day. When Cheryl said that to me, that really kind of sparked a lot of stuff about the belt, and it's just kind of interesting. But before I move on from list, is there any questions from you guys that you have? Uh, yeah, Brooklyn says the family also seemed to amass so much stuff. Who knows if even what was taken or not? Yeah. Well, one thing about, um, yeah, this is a great point, Raul. I'd like to know which jewelry wasn't returned. Exactly. Right. And what that is. We don't have the search warrant returned yet. New York State, when you get a search warrant from the court, you go to the court, you establish your probable cause, you get the warrant signed by the judge. And then as soon as you have that piece of paper in your hot little hands, you don't actually have to be physically present with the warrant in order to do it. As long as a member of the department has that search warrant, you could call up and say, go hit the house. We got it. But in New York State, you get something called a search warrant return. And all of the things that you take in the search warrant has to be written in the search warrant return and returned to the court that gave you the search warrant. And that's the kind of stuff that we're looking for and we're keeping an eye on. I know Raul is keeping his eye on this thing. If you're not following Raul, if any of the mods are in here, if you could put his link information in there to his website and his Twitter feed, I'd appreciate that if you can do that, because he's a great source on this case for a lot of different things, including other potential victims that could be involved in this case. And he's got a lot of information, and he knows sometimes things that I definitely don't know. So he's a great source for anybody out there who was looking for it. And Sent, how are you? So if there's anything else on list that you want to, Kerry says, if it was my ex-husband and he was suspected of charge, I wouldn't want anything unless it was definitively mine that I bought myself, because I'd worry it was from the victims. Yeah, that's a great point, Kerry. Like I said, these are the different things that, you know what? You don't think about these things until something happens or something brings it up. Anne Marie Chin, thank you very much for gifting a membership. Wow, this is amazing today. This is great. Thank you a lot. That is great. Says, I feel annoying if I ask some questions again. I'm T-Pain. No, come on. You ask the questions. That's what I asked you. If you have a question before I move. Thanks, Missy. There is Catch Linktree page, has his information, all this stuff. Thank you, Missy, for doing that. And yeah, make sure you save his stuff in one of your favorites, because you're going to be referring to it. If you're following this, who wrote first, Rex or Jesperson did, Lily. He wrote back, and he responded. Rex responded back to him. And Rex did say in the letter, like I said, I didn't want to get totally into it because, like I said, Gisella's got a great video on this. But he got back to him and said that this is this really disturbing stuff, right? So Rex is basically saying that he's got so much fan mail from people that he's the only person that he's responded to so far has been Jesperson. And I guess the only reason why he's done it is because this guy is a serial killer who basically doesn't want anything from him. He said he's getting so many different letters and emails from people that he's basically keeping himself busy with a fan club. It's absolute nuttiness and craziness. I'd like to see some of those requests or some information. I'm sure some of it's from journalists and reporters who are asking for information for interviews and some insight. But nobody, if you're a reporter or a journalist, you know that this guy isn't going to ask any. I mean, you could try, but he's not going to answer anything before a court case, before a trial. That would absolutely be stupid for him to write or do anything. Yeah, how can they even be able to communicate? Yeah, this is something that has really got me mad over the years. I mean, they get iPads kind of thing. They get tablets in prison. They get internet access, and they get cable TV and in their own rooms, for crying out loud. So it's something that, and there's also been cases where perpetrators who have been convicted of crimes then harassing their victims' families via the internet. It's absolutely craziness what's going on. Yeah, it's happening. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. And then no problem, Viv. You got it. Have a great day. So yeah, so we're gonna move on unless you guys have another specific question about Rex. it's something big's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I guarantee it. Whether it's the new police commissioner, they better be naming a new police commissioner in the next couple of weeks. We only got 5 weeks left of the year, or 4 weeks left of the year, and then they're going to be able to, yeah, in their own rooms, MJ. Yeah, this is what we're dealing with, and it's just, it's just nuttiness. So let's switch over to Delphi now. Talk about, like I said, we'll keep this PG-13. This is a train wreck, this case. Bob Mata, you guys know him as defense attorneys, has been on top of this case. The law stuff, which I'm not going to get involved with because I don't understand this whole thing about the lawyers and the judge, and there's all kinds of stuff. But there's certain things I do want to talk about in regards to law enforcement and different things that are dealing with in this case. The big problem that you have here with those leaked crime scene photos is that it set off this storm of allegations of Odinism and ritualistic killings that the police and that kind of stuff kind of like poo-pooed the stuff, I think, kind of too quickly in dealing with this stuff. The crime scene photos should never be anywhere that they can be leaked out, right? So we do know now that the Andrew Baldwin, one of the defense attorneys for Richard Allen, was removed by the Judge Gull, I guess, amongst other things, but the leak of these crime scene photos. Apparently, this guy, Mitchell Westerman, that worked for Baldwin, came across these crime scene photos of Abby and Libby and took photographs with his phone of the still photographs. He then gave them to somebody else who then disseminated them through, I guess, certain news outlets or true crime clubs and what have you. I don't know exactly where it actually went. Well, he's been charged now, and he actually confessed to it, allegedly, to the crime of conversion. Now, Dilly Pickles, thank you very much for gifting a membership. I appreciate that. Thank you. Now, if you looked at the crime conversion in Indiana State Penal Code, it basically says, if you convey or you take something, it's the way it's worded, and taking a photo of something and then a photo of a photo and then disseminating. I guess they need to put in there electronically. They need to update that statute, and if other states are watching what's happening in Delphi right now and don't update their penal code in regards to electronic means of transferring or conversion, wherever they want to describe these crimes as, they better start doing it in there, because defense attorney is going to say it's not written in the penal law. And you say, oh, come on, Joe, give me a break. Well, yeah, I got news for you. New York State, in their criminal possession of a weapon statute, had that the automatic possession, and they had, I think it was 9 deadly weapons, was an automatic felony that you didn't have to show intent to use them. And one of them was described as brass knuckles. Well, it got challenged when somebody was arrested with metal knuckles. And the defense attorney says, they're not brass. You can't charge them with the automatic felony. And they ended up winning. So the penal law had to be updated to say metal knuckles, right? Not brass. So it was something as specific as that. So Indiana, first on the list, need to update their statute, including electronic versions of these crimes, where you're taking photographs of crime scenes and disseminating automatic, whatever, misdemeanor or felony, and that's something that needs to be. Yeah, so when it got leaked, a second man who passed them on committed suicide. I didn't know that, Sherry. So this guy Westerman gave it to somebody else, and this guy gave him out, and then that guy had committed suicide. Is that what we're getting out of this? I didn't know that part. So Anne-Marie says, I don't understand the drama over the crime scene photos. Gazella mentioned she's been offered them way before this year. Well, there's been different kinds of crime scene photos, I believe. Initially, there was crime scene photos that were leaked from the beginning of the crime scene, but these come at a weird time, right? It came out with the whole thing about Odinism, and then about the ritualistic killings, and about these sticks that were placed on the bodies. That law enforcement, by the way, didn't collect those sticks until apparently weeks later. So that's another major screw up over there. I mean, with that. Listen, I still can't believe in 2023 that police departments are making this many problems at crime scenes. I mentioned the Koberger stuff numerous times, and now we're hearing the stuff out of Delphi. So Casey is saying yes, the second on 3 leaks. Life Love, thank you very much for gifting a membership. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So, A. Hyman, expect these photos are a releak? Yeah, it could possibly be. It's absolutely crazy, though, that we have to deal with this stuff. Releasing crime scene photos is damaging to the case on so many different levels. First of all, it provides access to things that the public shouldn't see, specifically before a jury is convened. Right? That's the first problem. And then you're tampering with juries and everything else after that. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Then the second thing is there are things in those crime scene photos, whether they are physical evidence, whether it is behavioral evidence that happen in that crime scene, things that happen that only the killer knows about, or killers, right? We always have to say killer or killers involved in the stuff. And it presents law enforcement with a whole set of other problems, because you then would get people in a case like this where you have this much of a mass media on this, including social media. You get people that come out of the woodworks now wanting to take responsibility for cases such as this. And if the police don't have certain things that they can verify and be able to corroborate what people are saying, or basically saying that somebody is making the stuff up, that they weren't at the crime scene, it's a problem. And what do I suggest? We had another case. Remember Rachel Morin, the woman who was murdered on the trail. We had somebody who interjected himself into the crime scene, about the crime scene and everything else that was going on, and they kind of said like this guy was never at the crime scene. So it's important that that law enforcement, including this case now, the defense attorneys, because as they get the discovery materials, to keep these crime scene photos locked up somewhere so that this doesn't happen again. It's absolutely craziness, and it's just. Thank you, Life Love. I appreciate that. It's absolutely craziness that we even have to even discuss this stuff. But if you think about another famous case, the basketball player, Kobe Bryant, right? Law enforcement taking photos, not even just law enforcement, but firemen, EMS workers, taking crime scene photos, and that's what they are, right? Until an investigation is done, you treat everything as if it's a crime scene or if it's a murder until it's proven otherwise. And then they're showing people the pictures of the human remains, in the bar and all this other stuff. And then, Kobe Bryant's wife suing and getting millions of dollars for that. There are now statutes on many states' books that if a first responder or any responders, whether they're cops, firemen, or EMS workers, I know Massachusetts just passed one recently, that if you disseminate crime scene photos through social media, through your phones, they're going to charge you with a misdemeanor. So that's something to think about, and I think every state should have one of those things. When I was doing this work, we didn't have social media. I mean, we had Polaroid cameras, so we would take pictures with the Polaroid cameras at the crime scene. Initially, that's what you did, because that's where the crime scene was the most pristine. No such thing as a perfect crime scene, but you always snap the pictures with the Polaroids. I can't remember any cases where those Polaroids ending up in the news. I just don't. I don't know if things have changed so much in regards to, how things are disseminated for likes and clicks, because the people, the first responders and stuff that are actually presenting this stuff got nothing but trouble for it, getting fired or sued or what have you. There is absolutely no benefit for doing this. And I can't imagine why this is even a thing and why we even keep on talking about this. There was a case, if you're interested, that Massachusetts case that spurred the law is something really important to look at, because can you imagine the family members where, this stuff is happening, right? That's why you looked at the leaks in this Delphi case. These 2 young girls, I mean, first of all, no one needs to see that stuff. Unless you're in the court, unless you're in law enforcement, unless you're the defense team. No one needs to see this. And I don't even know if they were going to plan on showing those to a jury, in certain aspects. But now you have to make sure you do it. And it's just something that, what happens if jury members have already seen these crime scene photos? It becomes a real issue. I'm catching the conversation over here in the last bit. I mean, Teresa says they know who did it through DNA, but where is he? I don't know which case that you're actually referring to there. Yeah, it's sad. No one has morals. It's absolutely, absolutely insane. Yeah, it's a digital world. Hope, hate, fear, and it's something that really, thank God, I don't have to deal with this on a daily basis between doing crime scenes with social media and then investigations and even cold cases when I was head of the Bronx cold case squad and having to deal with this 24-hour news cycle of true crime stuff. It's absolutely, and it's so, and then there's a list of characters in this whole Delphi case. And like I said, go to Defense Diaries YouTube page. He's got this stuff nailed down, but the judge ended up going into the hospital after all this stuff was going on. I mean, it's just, like I said, if it's not one thing, it's your mother in this case. It's just craziness. If anybody has anything new on Delphi, Rachel Morin. Yeah, they have the suspect for the case, but I was talking about the guy in the initial stages of the investigation was saying that he was at the crime scene and that he found the body and everything else that was going on. There were fingerprints found on the girls. Were they tested? Did they match RA? MJ, I am unaware of any testing or any other evidence that they have. We know that all the evidence hasn't been listed. But for the last 10 minutes or so, I just want to go through these other two things. I'm going to mention the name of the next case. And you say to yourself, Joe, you kidding me? We're still going to be talking about this? We're going to be talking about more about this. JonBenet Ramsey. There was a big update. Like I said, a lot of these major cases are getting like pushed to the back shelf because we're looking at these celebrated cases and we're not looking at exactly what's going on. But there's some interesting things that have happened over the last month in the JonBenet Ramsey case. And I'm just kind of like, I'm sure many of you guys are already aware of this, but the family members have said, let's do some new DNA and let's do some of this new DNA testing. But there's a new administration in Boulder, Colorado. And kind of under the radar, it was actually late last year, they removed the head of the investigation. This guy, his name was Thomas Trujillo. They did it in 2022. Now, he was actually cited. He was suspended. He was cited for bad investigations. They didn't get into exactly what he did or didn't do. When you have an investigator that gets suspended, it generally is that, and I say generally, I don't know if this is the case in this thing, but in my experience, when you have a detective that gets suspended, it's because he or she wasn't doing anything on the investigation in regards to adding what we call fluff, where he's just adding nonsensical reports to it, or he's claiming he did something and he didn't do it. So this guy was in charge of the JonBenet Ramsey case for 27 years. And I'm just kind of questioning other past administrations for leaving the same person in charge of this case. A fresh set of eyes was well worth it a long time ago. And if it's not being solved with this person, wherever it was time to pivot and make a change a long time ago. Those decisions do not make you a popular supervisor in the detective squads. But you're not there to make friends. You're there to solve cases. You're not there to make friends. You're there to solve cases. And sometimes replacing somebody or choosing another detective to get a case instead of the one who's up for it, like I said, it's unpopular, but you know what? Screw it, because that's not how policing works, and we're not worried about stepping on people's toes. We're concerned about closing cases and making sure that we stop further victimization. And that was the whole thing about how I handled myself in the squad. Doesn't make you a popular guy, but you know what? I don't care. All right, that's the bottom line. But here's the thing: they've already mentioned a couple of days ago, and this link to this video, not the video, this article about JonBenet Ramsey that I got this information from is posted in the show notes. Everything I'm talking about, if there's something specific, I'm not talking out of my butt. This is something where it's been happened over the last couple of days, and I'm going to give you the sources for it so you can read about it. And they have said now that there was DNA from the crime scene that was never tested. Can you believe this? John Ramsey, the father of JonBenet, confirmed that on I think it was News Nation interview, say that there was DNA evidence that has been never tested, and now they're finally testing it through an outside. Are you kidding me? Really? I mean, at this point, it's sources in the show notes. Yes, I try to do that all the time, Casey, especially about cases like this. So when I'm telling you that there was evidence found in this case from 27 years ago that were never tested, that's not a speculation. That's a fact. It came from John Ramsey himself, and I said the link is in the show notes. Okay. How on earth in the last 20 years, right? Because this case has been 27 years old now, roughly, give or take. But even then, with all the advancements that we've had in the last even 5 years, why are we only talking about this now in 2023? And they finally get to test the DNA, Regina. Finally. So they're doing that now. And this allegedly happened only a few weeks ago. So hopefully, with the new crime lab, we can have some new information. They also stated that they were going to use familial DNA testing and they were going to build a family tree. So kind of thing like they caught the Golden State Killer doing that. So they have the DNA. If this individual's DNA is not in CODIS, right, the combined DNA index system, they're going to do the family tree and they're going to try to back their way into a suspect based on what they find. Which brings me to another teaching moment, just like they did with, like I said, Golden State Killer, just like they did with Rex, when we go, and kind of what they did with Koberger, where they get a DNA sample, then they collect an abandonment sample, and then they, get their match based on that abandonment sample. I did a quiz in the community post a couple of days ago, or maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. What is the name of the court case that allows the police to collect abandoned property and test it? I'm not going to give you the answer because the quiz is up there. I do a quiz just about every day in the community tab, and it's usually involved investigations or forensics. And that one was on a couple of weeks ago. Yesterday's, I left it up a little bit longer. I do want to try to within 24 hours. I put in 3 different logos I want you to vote on and to see on which should be the main logo for this channel. So if you haven't done those after the show, you just please go to the community tab and vote for which logo you believe. If Stevie is here, we're going to have to make a couple of updates because there's one that's going to win. And hey, Pete. And it's just voted. Thanks, Brooklyn. Yeah, so I want you guys to vote because you get a chance to actually see how this channel looks and what kind of stuff that we're going to be using. So it's just read that article. I think it was coming from the Messenger. Read that article, and there's a News Nation link to the John Ramsey interview, and that's up there too. The last case I want to discuss quickly in the last 5 minutes or so that I have, Brian Walshe, who was accused, if you remember, last January, he's being accused of killing his wife, Anna Walshe, and he just had a court appearance a couple of weeks ago, and he's got another one coming up in January. But here was the interesting evidence drops that they talked about in the article, and that's why I want to bring it up because it's kind of relative about what's going on. So if you don't recall, this happened in Cohasset, Massachusetts. The police were then looking for the wife. Here's the deal. They found a whole bunch of evidence. Now, we're not talking about his Google searches because we'll get into that another thing. But they have found now a piece of her, sorry, that damn thumb again. They found a piece of her necklace in a garbage bag. They found her COVID card. And what else did they find? Oh, a hacksaw. Right? Now, the hacksaw becomes really important because if you remember the list of things that Brian Walshe Googled was what's the best tool to use to dismember a body, and then he searched, I think, hacksaw, best tool to use to dismember a body. So that becomes a real interesting, real tidbit of information there. They have discovered 10, and just in the last, 8 months after the murder, they recovered 10 bags of evidence throughout all these different dump sites. So it's absolutely interesting to see where this case is headed. Initially, if you recall, they had done the search warrant on the house and they had found some blood and some evidence of maybe the crime happening in the house. One of the Google searches was, how do you get blood off wood floor? All right. How long does it take for a body to decompose? How do you stop a body from decomposing? He did they absolutely put out 21 of his Google searches, and they MJ COVID card. I don't have a clue where mine. They're still waiting on the DNA. Yeah, they're testing Dizzy. They're testing the DNA from the hacksaw and some of these other things, but I think they're going to find exactly what they need on these things. And that they are I think they got the right guy here. The way that it's looking up. So yeah, so here January 2nd. So here his wife disappeared on January 1st, if you remember. January 2nd, he had the hacksaw best tool to dismember a body, including, hey Jessica, yeah, including like I said, several other things. There's links to that in the show notes too. So that's my breakdown of post Thanksgiving. I hope some of those things were a little different than what you normally hear, and I'm going to try to do this on shows that we don't have any interviews going on. But here, just for the heads up, so tomorrow we got a bunch of new members today. So tomorrow and this goes for the Kick members too. 12 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to do a Kick we're going to do a Kick members only and a YouTube members only show. And we got some surprises for you guys. We're going to do this stuff. So I appreciate you guys supporting this channel any way possible, including just liking and sharing and subscribing is a huge help to me too. So not that I don't appreciate everything that everyone has done for me. I do. But tomorrow's show will be interesting. It'll be my first time doing one of these members only. So there might be a few hiccups, but it should be a lot of fun too. So I know, Jay, I don't know if you're still in the room, I'm going to tell that Neil Young story. I have a great Rolling Stones and Neil Young story when I was doing dignitary protection. That story we're going to talk about tomorrow. We got a couple of other things. Gritty Grit, yeah. So tomorrow, as a member, you should be able to see it anyway after the show if you don't get up and see that. So yeah, Jay, it should be a lot of fun, and it's just something to think about. Then on Tuesday, I have a good friend of mine. He was a former detective from the Cold Case Squad, Wendell Stratford. I'm going to post some stuff on him. The picture I have, if you saw the link to the show, there's question marks on the person that he has arrested, and famous serial killer. Wendell has locked up over 300 murderers, cold cases. He closed while he was in the Cold Case Squad, and he is a consultant for Blue Bloods and other TV shows. So Blue Blood, with Tom Selleck, and which I told him I don't watch, but he laughs every time I talk to him about that. But he has some other funny stories that we're going to tell. And he was just on an Oxygen show, and it was a case where they didn't invite me to do it, or I might have turned them down. I don't know, but I was the supervisor for this crime scene search with the search warrant at the house in a town in Brooklyn called Seagate. And I say a town in Brooklyn because it's separate from. It has its own police department. It's got its own stuff. It's absolutely crazy, and yeah, I'm T-Pain. We'll figure it out. Just send me a message, and I'll let you know on that. But so hold on, Jessica Saman. It's YouTube. It's going to be on both. So tomorrow will be the members for YouTube and Kick. You guys are both groups are going to be invited into this. I am T-Pain. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. So that's another good story. We're going to get into that one. So that's Tuesday, Wendell Stratford. December 2nd, I have Gerald Posner, who wrote the book Case Closed about the John F. Kennedy assassination. We just passed the 60th anniversary. He was all tied up this week with the 60th anniversary stuff, so he's going to be on Sunday. And then I have on December 5th, Tuesday, I believe it is, 7 p.m., Barbara Butcher, who wrote What the Dead Know. She is the former head of the medical legal investigators of the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner. And that show should be a lot of fun, too. Barbara's a great storyteller, and she's, yeah, Jay, we're bringing the heat. But you know what, pal? I mean, without your help in getting this thing launched and started, I wouldn't even be here to talk. And that goes for all of you guys here. Yeah, it's going to be gritty. It's going to be a great week. And we got some other things lined up for you in December. December's going to be a little tough at the end of the month, right? Because of the holidays between Hanukkah and Christmas and everything else that's going on. So I don't know what other interviews I have, but we'll probably do some analysis and stuff like that. So I am at my hour limit because I want to keep everything to an hour or less because I think people's attention span of life. Reading Barbara's book now, that's awesome because she's going to be live. So if you have questions about it, make sure you tune into that show and you can ask her because she'll answer questions. She's great. There you go, Charlotte. Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of tricks up my sleeve, and I've known a lot of people over the years, whether it's through doing what I was doing in the police department, of course, or teaching at the college. I got to meet a lot of people, and kind of using those relationships. Yep, you love the hour rule, Rachel. Yeah, a lot of people do, Rachel. Okay, guys, we are at that hour right this second. I want to thank you for spending your hour with me. And for the members tomorrow, 12 o'clock, we're going to do this all over again. We got some other, fun stuff to talk about. And thanks, Dilly. And you guys have a great rest of the evening. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.